Hello, this is John Speelman with my video version of my latest column, number 197 no less, of what was my Agony column but isn't anymore. It's just a column, and I've called it The Ultimate Weapon. And I'm really happy because I've discovered after 2 years, can you believe it, that you can pause a recording while something like a phone call is happening and then resume? This had not occurred to me in my great codgerly state, but my son has just helped me with that. My son Lawrence has just helped me with that. So, which is a wonderful thing. And I start here actually talking about my cat, one of my two cats, Zora. We got a black cat, Zora, a beautiful black cat, and also a beautiful tabby, Ginny. And I was on Thursday morning, I'm recording on Saturday, and this is for Sunday. I was lying on the bed after a bath. I was stroking the cat, and I was trying to think what the hell I was going to do for this week's column, because sometimes inspiration does not strike me quite as much as it ought to. And I thought, well, I spoke to Zora. I said, what shall I do? And you'd be astounded, but she didn't actually reply in English. Can you imagine it, the rudeness of it? Anyway, so I just thought, oh, maybe I could do a segue from her to Black is Okay, to Andras Shadoryan's famous book, because, as you probably know, he sadly died a few weeks ago. But I thought a bit more, and I thought eventually, I think what I'll do is I'll do double checks, which are the ultimate weapon in chess, which is why I've called it the ultimate weapon. And the double check has been called the atomic bomb, or the atom bomb of the chessboard, and perhaps it should be the hydrogen bomb. It's a check from two lines at once, and because the lines can't both be covered at the same time by a single chess move, the king has to move. You can't interpose as you can against a normal check. Block, interpose, or whatever. And so the king has to move. If the king has no retreat square, it's just checkmate. And this does occur sometimes from a clear blue sky. And sometimes the king has to move, but because you can't rearrange your pieces, mate follows soon afterwards. So I've got some examples of both of these, and then some more problem themes. It's an idea of Jonathan Mestel. Somebody goes double check, the opponent replies. Not only does he get out of the double check, or she, but they deliver checkmate in one. See if you can, if you're interested, if you can compose some of these. You can use normal moves or en passants. Then I've got something with what is called the Knight Rider. So I will show you a Knight Rider, what it looks like. This is a Knight Rider on A1. I don't have a set to put fairy pieces on the board. It goes along lines to either B3, C5, D7, or C2, E3, or G4. It has to stay on the same knight line, of course. It can't veer off with a different type of knight move on a different line after going along that. You can't move a bishop along a diagonal and then move it on another diagonal. A rider is actually a piece that moves along a line. So a rook is a one-move horizontally or vertically rider, and a bishop is a one-move diagonal rider, but you're allowed to move as many of those as you can. And like a rook or a bishop or a queen, if the line is blocked by a piece of the same colour, it can't go over it. Although it's a knight, it can't jump over it. And if it's blocked by a piece of so if there's a pawn on E3, a white pawn, it can't go to G4 or to E3. If there's a black pawn on E3, it can take it, but it can't go to G4. So we'll come to that later. So I've got all these examples of double checks, and we start with Nimzowitsch against Amateur. I'm so nervous today. This is my fourth attempt after interruptions before Lawrence helped me to this extraordinary conclusion that you can pause the bloody thing. And there we are, it is recording very happily. Then this is Nimzowitsch against Amateur, which happened in a simultaneous display in Pernau, which I first thought must be in Latvia, but is actually in Estonia, if you think about the name. It's fairly obvious, I think, as well. And, okay, simultaneous display, guy takes the pawn. Trying to be clever, but after d5, a6, bishop d3, an accident has occurred. Knight f6, pawn takes knight, e4, rook e1, d5. Now I think you normally go bishop f1, pawn takes pawn, something sensible, and you'd win eventually, of course. But actually, Nimzowitsch went bishop e2 in rather cunning fashion, and rather than pawn takes pawn, after which the game does sort of continue, your man played pawn takes knight, taking the bait. But this was not a good move after pawn takes pawn. Black should try, I suppose, bishop e6, pawn takes rook equals queen, queen takes, bishop takes, you only lose a rook. Pawn takes bishop, you lose more, pawn takes rook equals queen, and the pawn is pinned against the king, so it can't take. But black, not being a terribly strong player, presumably played bishop takes pawn, when material is equal. But after bishop to b5, check, it is double check, mate. Check from the bishop, check from the rook. The black king has no retreat squares that it can go to apart from e7 covered by the rook and d7 covered by the bishop. Double checkmate from a clear sky, or at least only somewhat thundery one. Sorry, we'll carry on. So next we go to here. This is a game played from the NRW Championship, under 15, 1995, which when I looked it up is North Rhine-Westphalia. I suppose I should have realised from the names of the players and Bad Driburg, but I couldn't think what it was originally. It's a little close to NSW as New South Wales, isn't it? That obviously isn't. So this game, what I did was, I went through ChessBase, through Megabase, looking for examples. I didn't try to do the manoeuvre thing, which is something I don't bother with myself, though I'm sure I know it's a good feature. What I did do was I put a rook on e1, a bishop on b5, and a black king on e8. And I said, show me games in which this happened and white won in 15 moves or less. I could probably have done 12 moves or less, I imagine. And I went through them using F11, using the next game function. It's F11 in ChessBase 15 by default. I don't know what it is in 7. What are we up to, 16 or 17? But I mean, I keep a reasonable version of ChessBase that I'm familiar with, and of course they would update me if I asked nicely. Okay, this is another game from these two kids, or they're both under 15. Here black played the excellent, well, not excellent move, a6, which was supposed to stop bishop b5 check, but it did not, because the rook and the bishop were checking simultaneously, and it was double checkmate on move 7. So not a particularly great game, really, but still quite amusing. And the third one is more interesting. This is a real game. I mean, when I say a real game, I shouldn't be rude to these 15-year-olds or to Nimzowicz's opponent, but this is from an open tournament. h6, rather slow. Yeah, bishop e7 looks better. Bishop e7 is a move, or knight f6 is a move. And knight g5 now, d5, pawn takes pawn. Because there's no knight in c6, as in the two knights, it's not a particularly... It's something you can play if you want to, I think, just about. Anyway, your man went h6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3. I think I might have played a4 or castles. I found an amusing variation. Knight takes pawn, knight takes knight. I think actually queen h5 probably win. But I was amused by this variation. And here you really better take the knight, because if you take the bishop, there's knight f6 double checkmate. So since we're in double checkmates, that amused me. Anyway, what happened was he went f4, which is a slightly odd move. I suppose it's to put the bishop on f3. If bishop b7, there is e5, is annoying. But there's bishop e7, defends the queen, which means that e5 is slightly less annoying. Went b4, knight d5, and here black should have played knight takes knight. Should have played knight takes knight, queen takes knight. You can play rook a7 or you can play queen c7. Queen c7 is reasonable because now if queen takes rook, bishop b7, queen to there, knight to there. I mean, I suppose you can play either queen takes a6 now, but you're certainly worse. You've lost a queen for a rook and bishop and a pawn for no particular reason. But he went knight takes e4, which is much, much too greedy. Castles. Now, bad things, really bad things are happening on the e file at this moment. And your man tried knight f6, which is a mistake as well. Certainly dubious. And rook e1, bishop e6. By now you could try bishop e7, knight takes knight, pawn takes. If you go bishop takes, then you have a typical combination using the double check, then queen d6 check, even stronger than rook e8. Queen takes d6, rook e8 mate, king g8, rook e8 check, or bishop e7, queen takes queen, bishop takes queen, rook e8, checkmate. Lots and lots of old games like that. But the man went bishop e6. I suppose we can go into replay training now if we want to. What should black play? White play here. The e-file, the rook is opposite the king, so he plays e5. Nice move. Knight takes knight, queen takes knight, it's slam. The guy probably saw it was checkmate next move, but didn't care because he's completely lost. I mean, his rook's on prise, the bishop's on prise. The best he's doing is playing rook a7, pawn takes bishop. So he took the queen and allowed bishop b5, double checkmate. Actually on move 15, wasn't it? So lucky I went as far as 15, because this one I like. So yeah, I went through Mega Base. I didn't get all the way because it was, you know, they were all much of a muchness. Most of them were just Roy Lopez's, where White had played rook e1 and bishop b5 and won very quickly. But there was the old double check, and I just went boop, boop, boop until I saw one. So then I started doing some games in which there's a double check and a combination, but it still leads to checkmate. So we've got Reti Tartakova. It's a famous game, friendly game played in Vienna, I think in a cafe or something. There's a book by Chernev called Irving Chernev called something like 500 Modern Chess Brilliancies or something, miniatures or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember. I know it's on my shelf. I can see the cover in my mind's eye, but I'd have to go and faff around if I was going to find it. I suppose I could. Well, I won't. I did do a column in it a while ago of some games, some miniatures, and this is one of them actually. This is a famous game in its own right as well. Okay, knight f6, and I think he'd probably in a friendly game have played g takes, I don't know, but e takes is the move also played. He played queen d3, e5 is a bad move really. Queen a5 check, bishop d2. Let's now go into replay training. Queen takes pawn. So what should White play here? His knight is pinned, it looks a bit disastrous really. If you go f3, knight takes e4, nothing very much is happening, very splendid. But there is a move, a nice move, which sorts everything out. See, have you seen it? I don't know. It's castle's queenside anyway. If black now takes the knight with the queen, you play rook e1 with a big advantage. But your man played knight takes knight. Given the theme, I don't know. People who've seen this pattern before will see it immediately, and it is ping. King e8, rook d8 mate, and if king c7, bishop d8 mate, which I think happened in the game. Very nice little combination. Only possible, of course, because all the black king's retreat squares are covered. So it isn't double check anymore, but it is mate. Nice game. Then I've got some more examples. Got this. What is this? We'll do it in replay training again, though you should see it pretty easily, I think. Went there. I guess he was going to do something. Queen takes f2, which black must have thought was a strong move. Can you see... yeah, well, if you can read the note on the screen, which I can't, even though I've got a big screen. But I can if I try. Of course, this allows queen d8 check again, and queen d8 is less obvious in this position, I think, than with the queen in the d file. It's less obvious the queen's going to stomp down the diagonal, but it's allowed, and he resigned because, of course, if queen d8, king takes queen, bishop g5, double check, king to there, rook to there, mate. Nice. So then I went on and did something on a long black diagonal. Many games like this. This is a game between two strong grandmasters, so I don't really understand how this happened. that black allowed this, because I mean it's just, there are things you can do. You can blunder. I mean, I blunder unfortunately much more than I used to, but there are things I can't imagine myself playing in any circumstances. There are notes here. I'm not bothering with them. That's not really the game I'm interested in. You'd play bishop takes knight, okay. Knight c4. I don't know how you're doing. You've got a big problem on the dark squares, whether you can defend. If knight g6, you'd play knight e6, wouldn't you? And you'd splat black almost certainly. At least I think you would. Yeah, there's quite a nice variation. I'll show you a variation. Goes knight g6, takes, so maybe you can go queen e7. I was trying to go king f8, rook over queen e7, and then there was a thing with bishop g7 check, winning both the knights. I assume this is a winning attack, more or less. I just went about there. That's pretty foul. Very, very unpleasant for black. I think black would lose this pretty quickly. It's my feeling anyway. If I ask an engine, I think it's going to say that this is plus minus. It's saying plus equals actually. Okay, anyway. So anyway, what happened was, I seem to have started analysing this unfortunately. So knight g6. Oh, it doesn't actually want knight c6. Interesting. Just knight e6 screamed out to me, but okay. All right, he went knight c4, queen g3. If you take the bishop, something pretty awful happens. Castles, yeah, if you did this, queen takes this, rook to there, knight takes that, winning the house, the garden, and the everything else. So he went bishop c3. I'm going to lose the analysis now. Put the notation back. g6, bishop d3, knight to there, queen e3. I will put it into replay training. Knight d7. So there's a standard combination here that experienced players will see immediately. It uses the bishop, the knight and the queen. I just don't understand how an experienced grandmaster can have allowed that. It just seems very, very, very odd to me. You know, I mean, he just has to play f6. He's losing, but okay, he should lose. But I mean, so after knight d7, queen to there, check, exclam. Not even two exclams. And queen checks, takes, knight f5, double check. You must give a double check. If the knight were on e5 and the bishop on somewhere else, you'd have to go to h8 and give the double check on g6 or f7. And here you can mate on either e7 or h6. If there was a bishop on d8, you'd have to go to h6. As a bishop on f4, you'd have to go to e7. If there was a bishop on g5, you couldn't play the combination because both squares would be covered. Famous combination on the long diagonal. Then we've got another one. Look away for a second, then I'll just set it up. It's this position. Black to play and win. I don't think it's very difficult, but I mean, it might take a couple of seconds, depends, or longer, depending on how used you are to chess. I mean, the thing is, you've got the queen, the rook, and the bishop on the long diagonal. If the rook wasn't there, you could play queen g2 or queen h1 mate. But your problem is that if rook d1 check, which would be the normal way to open the diagonal, either queen or rook recaptures with check. You can consider rook c5, but to stop queen c7 check, but actually queen d1 check is obviously at least a draw, probably winning. And there's also queen h7, which in fact wins. It obviously leads to many much checks. Just a question of how many and how powerful they are, which isn't immediately. You have to think a little bit, but it's clear it should be made. And the solution, of course, is queen to there check. Set up a double check and rook to there mate. Just a position I set up recently. I was thinking, what's a nice example? Next one. This is a game, quite a famous game of Akiba Rubinstein in the Warsaw Championship 1917. He used to play knight d4 against the 4 knights. He sacrifices this pawn and plays d5 here. And I believe you can even play king f1 in this position because the bishop hangs on b6 if you want to. And the engine I was just using wasn't particularly upset by that. It went knight takes knight, knight takes bishop, queen c2. I'd missed queen c2 was legal actually. And apparently that's about equal according to the great and glorious engine. Which, I mean, you know, if the engine speaks, the engine speaks. Not obvious. Anyway, he didn't do that. He went knight e3, bishop d6, getting the bishop off breeze, castles. I'm not trying to find best moves. b5, getting a tempo, bishop b7, taking aim. A lot of pieces aim now at the king already. Knight e1 to protect g2. Queen to their g3, queen to their c3. Okay, what do you think Black played in this position? I mean, it's not that wonderful, I think. He could just have played knight takes bishop and had a very good game, clearly, because he's only a pawn down and he's got many much pieces aimed in the general direction they ought to be. It would have been a pretty dangerous attack, I think. But what else could he do if he didn't want to move the knight? Well, he can go there. Nice attacking move. Pawn takes knight, necessary. Now, knight g4 doesn't work because if knight takes, pawn takes, queen e2 check, and then f4. And that's not a clear position because the queen is defending h1. I don't know, you can make a draw with queen g3 check if you want to, I think. And rook checks and rook h2. Maybe actually that's even a way to play for the advantage. Though you will be a piece down at the end as black. Because king e3, rook e8 check, king d3, you win the queen back, but you have 2 rooks and 2 bishops, and white has 2 rooks, 2 bishops and a knight. Anyway, he didn't do that, he went h4. And now black should have gone knight f3, which is unclear. Because if pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop, queen takes pawn, with check king to there. Black doesn't have a knockout blow. I think he can take on g3 and then you play knight f5. And this is allegedly about equal. You can castle long and there's some funny line. You can't play bishop f7 because then queen h1, rook h2 and queen takes queen. So you go knight takes g3. And now you're going to be able to go queen to h3 to h2 and give perpetual check. But I think you can't actually do more in this position, according to its sublime majesty, and according to me, if I was not so idle as not to think about it. But white went queen e2, and in this position there is a nice combination which finishes the game with a big bang, and that is, well, it's queen h2 check, exclam, and he resigned. Because after queen h2, king takes pawn, double check. That's why I've got it here. King h1, rook h1 is checkmate. So rather nice. So then I've got a couple more examples. Again, I'm going to put this in replay mode. This is a game against Matthias Bartel, against one of the Sabos. I'm guessing a jeweler. Probably if that's a G. Doesn't say. G, probably a jeweler, I don't know. Romanian, anyway. And this game went as follows. Is he Matthias or Matthews? Anyway, this is how the game went. Black is a little bit over enthusiastic about his bishop d6 was played. I guess this position is probably fairly unpleasant at this stage. Queen d2, thrown in bishop takes knight, by the way, rook d8, b3, queen back. I guess queen c8 was better, e5. So black doesn't have any development in this position, which is a problem. He went there and he went knight d5. Can you find a nice combination now to smash black to smithereens? If bishop f8, king f8, the game continues. But there is a way. Notice that the rook on e1 is opposite the king on e8. And there are only 3 pieces in between it. It's quite a lot of lumps, but still, ultraviolets will win in this case. So, can you see White's first move, which is queen takes knight? So there are 2 variations. There's queen takes queen. He won a piece now, so you might as well take the rook. I don't know if you could try to play f5. If you went f5 now, then you'd go pawn takes pawn en passant, pawn takes rook, knight to there, check, leading to mate very shortly, clearly. Leading to mate in about 3. So, but after queen takes, check, smashing the line open, takes, bishop, check here, and then all you need to do is to get the rook to the g file. So you can go anywhere you like and go to the g file. And it is checkmate. If the pawn was an h6, it would still be mate. You just check on g4 or g3 and go rook g7 checkmate at the end. If it was an h5, you'd go to g5 or g3 and then you go rook g7 and bishop f4 mate. Not important, just something I happened to notice this moment. Anyway, he went takes and black took back with a pawn. Can you see now to the end? You know what the next move is because we've already had it. But how does white give mate, having smashed the file open? The answer is he goes check, takes, bishop e7, rook takes bishop check here. And now the lovely double check has to be taken. And then rook e1 mate. Lovely finish. I'm going to go Control R again. I hope that I haven't lost my notes. That would be really annoying if I had. Sometimes you can do that when you're in replay note, but I haven't. Now that combination was the E on the E file, rook e8 double check. And somehow it wasn't very obvious to me, though I know that pattern very, very well, and when it's on the G file, that would be completely obvious. I wouldn't have to think for more than a microsecond. So this is a game by the great Adolf Anderssen, one of the best players of the mid-19th century, and of course the author, the winner of the Immortal Game and the Evergreen Game, and many more. Of course he plays the Evans Gambit, and of course black had to take it. No gentleman would conceivably have refused a gambit at that time in chess history. It would have been jolly rude. Not sure if d5 is a particularly great move. Threatening to take on g7. Hasn't done this particularly well actually, Anderssen, in this case, I think. Game is just continuing. Now 98 would just have been fine for here, defending e8, but black played the inferior, well it loses, knight c4. And after rook to there, he was in trouble. If g6 you take, so he played knight e8, and now you play the same, a different combination, but the same sort of combination as in the last game, with queen takes g7 check exclam, take here, and now we've had this before, so you know how you finish off now. You play rook double check, king takes rook check, black can play queen g5, it was the 19th century, so he did rook takes queen checkmate. So, but the thing is that with this pattern, I absolutely know you play rook g8 double check. So I should have known that with the bishop and d6, the king and f8, you have the same combination. But somehow the patterns didn't quite mesh in my mind in the same way. That's that. Now, I've got the 2 puzzles, double check met by mate in 1, and then I've got one with an en passant as well. Double check including an en passant capture met by mate in 1. So if you want to solve them yourself, you're extremely welcome to try, or you could skip this and come back to this later. But otherwise I shall show you. This is one. There are many, many examples, of course. Rook f2 double check, king takes rook checkmate, discovered checkmate. Notice I put the rook on a1 and the bishop on a8, because although this isn't an especially pretty combination, is it in fact the case that if we change the colour of the pieces, then rook f2 double check, king takes rook is the only helpmate in 2? Is that true? That would be nice, wouldn't it? I think it probably is true actually, because you can't go anywhere else where, yeah, so actually it's a helpmate in 2. you turn it round, you change the colour of the pieces, and you go the rook check, king takes, mate, and that's the only solution to the helpmate in 2, which is something I hadn't realised before, and that's rather nicer. It makes it much nicer, but you have the rook and the bishop in the corner because it's aesthetically pleasing. That's rather nice that I've just discovered that. It is the 4th time I've recorded this today, Saturday, due to my gross stupidity, and it's rather nice that I've discovered something new as a result of my doggedness. Here black plays f5, obviously you could just play king e6 mate, pawn takes pawn, double check, king to there, the rook's pinned, the bishop's given discovered check, you can move the king to other squares as well, d7 or d8. Now then I was showing you what a knight rider is, here it is, it goes along knight's lines. And I've got 2 things. First I've got a triple checkmate. So I'm going to look away for a second and I will make this into... Actually you'll be able to read anyway and replay trading. So if you read the comment you'll see it. But this is white to play and mate in 2 moves. The piece on d3 is a knight rider. I don't have a kit to have a diagram with a knight rider inside chess space. I don't think it exists. It may do. If it does, the bods can give it to me as an extension or something. That would be very nice. That would be something for chess space 55 or something. Anyway, the solution is knight h1. The knight rider goes from h2 to h1, and then it gives check to the black king on e7, because the line is h1, g3, f5, e7. Black has to play f5, blocking the line, because the knight can't go by f5. Then knight rider takes f5 wouldn't be mate, because black would have 2 escape squares. But pawn takes pawn on passant is checked from the rook on e1, the pawn on f6, and the knight rider on h1. Treble checkmate. But even with a treble check, you can still play mate in 1. If you set it up properly, and this is an example. Look away. Well, you don't need to look away. It won't help really. Here, there are knight riders. It's also possible. Let's just change. I don't know. I can't be bothered. So there's check from the knight rider on f3. You could play king c7, which would actually be mate at once. But e5 stops the check because it blocks the line. Then when you take on passant, it's checked from the rook on d3, the knight rider on f3, and the pawn on e6. But black plays king c7, discovered check. Now the rook on d3 is pinned in the conventional way. The black king has no escape squares, as you can see. It looks as though you can play knight rider f3 to d7, but it's also pinned by the knight rider on h2, because if the knight rider moved from f3, you could go knight rider h2 to f3 to d4 takes b5, and therefore this is also checkmate. Well, I hope you find those amusing. Some people will, some won't. Finally, I'm going to do a helpmate. I'm going to show you a helpmate which I showed here before. Look away again, and I'll set it again to replay training. So we go to replay training. This is a helpmate in 3. Black is trying to set up a helpmate, and from the theme you might guess where the black king is going to be for that to work, because we got the same theme throughout this article, which, as you may remember, is the atom bomb, the double check. So you want to set up a double check. The king is going to have to be somewhere where the queen can check and the rook can check. And so I think by logic, once you know what the theme is, you can go king to there, rook to there, knight to there. You can't play knight takes pawn check because that would be check, so you queen to there, knight takes pawn check, rook takes knight, double checkmate. So I was talking about this before. I started composing helpmates for a little while, not for very long. I mean, this is pretty, but it's lots of people have done things like this. And what I was doing, I had a theme, and then what I did was I used a web page. You can see the page. I've put it here. It's called helpmat.comtera.com. Where is it? Is it Italy? Italy, yeah. So what I'd do is I'd put up the position and see if it worked. I'd have my idea, and rather than laboriously working through it, you have to drag, sorry, you don't do there actually. What I would do is just set it up on the board and see what happened. See whether there were cooks, because I was too idle. And given that it works, then I mean, my solution would work, but was there a cook? So I've just now, I did this previously, I said, what happens if you put the knight there and you say helpmate in 3 and you do analyze, and it says ping. There are a million solutions. What's happening? B4 rook h. Okay, so it gives the first solution, but then it also gives knight takes pawn with check, queen takes knight check, knight h7, rook h1, anything, queen. Oh, blast it, I've set up the wrong position. I apologise. I apologise. Let's put, the king should be there. That's why we had this, and now analyse again. Now it says knight takes, queen takes, knight h7, rook h1, king h8, queen takes, knight mate. And it gives some other solutions with knight e4, rook takes b5, king h7, rook g5, knight takes pawn, queen takes, knight mate. So there are many cooks. But if I do this, the one that I actually used and I analyse, it just gives the one solution, which is great. So then I couldn't remember where there were cooks, so I took this off the board because I knew all 4 of these pawns were stopping cooks. And I went analyse, and it says e5, queen d1, king g7, queen takes pawn with check, king g6, rook takes pawn, or king f6, rook takes pawn, checkmate. So that's why you need a pawn on b5 to stop the cook with queen to d1 takes d7 and rook takes b6 mate. What about if I had a pawn, just a pawn on b5? I can't remember again. Analyse, there'll be something wrong with this as well. King f7, rook c1, king e7, queen g1, king d6, queen c5 mate. Okay, so basically there are many cooks, and you need the pawns on both b6 and b5 to find them. And you could do it yourself manually and it would take hours and hours, or you can ask the helpmate analyzer and it goes ping. It happens to be a very useful ping. Thank you so much. I can't remember, does it say about somewhere? History, let's have a look. Oh, that's the history of my history of different helpmates of different sorts. And we'll go back again, sorry. We'll go back from history, we'll kill the history. Search help. I don't know if it says who it's by, it may do. Glossary, it doesn't. Somewhere one could find out who this is by. And thank you so much, whoever made it, because it's a wonderful resource. Okay, I'm going to go back. I hope you've enjoyed all of this. And I'm going to stop now, and the next column will be on the 2 and 14 is 16th of July, isn't it? 2nd and 14, 16th of July, Sunday the 16th. I've said, please, if you've got some other double checkmates which you like, then show them to me, send them to me, I'd be delighted. You can either do it by the editorial address given in the column, or you can use my own address, which I've given both here and I'll give you now. Jonathan, Jonathan, at jspeelman.co.uk. Please send me any double checks and I might use them next time. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Let's see, we're still going. We are. Good heavens.